Good morning. Welcome to the New Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. My name is Evan Rose. Currently, I'm the treasurer on the board. I've been a member of this church since 1997. Before that, I was a member in Santa Fe at the church there for about 10 years. My role at this church, I've been an RE teacher. I've been a teacher with the Our Whole Lives program. That's our sexuality program for the youth. I've also been on Forum Committee, currently on Forum Committee, and Social Justice. Social Justice, we do things, many activities such as the sanctuary program in Deming. We work with with Espanola, with the shelter there. We also work with the shelter in Santa Fe, and we have a book discussion group. If you're interested in the book discussion group, we actually meet tomorrow to talk about the 1619 project, and we'll also be meeting in November with another book there. And if you look at the announcements that come out periodically, you'll see what that book is. Okay. Oh, I should also mention that I met my wife through the Unitarian Church in Madison, Wisconsin. We were both going to the university age group there, and that's how we met. We met at a church potluck. Okay. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We gather together in a free and responsible church for truth and meaning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are at this moment, wherever you are in your life's journey, you are welcome to this community. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors or first-time guests. Our minister, the Reverend John Cullinan, would love to meet you after the service as we gather for coffee and conversation in the fellowship hall. And he would answer any questions you may have about our community. New parents are encouraged to speak with Tina DeYoe, our Director of LifeScan Religious Education. There are many options for the young children in worship this morning. For youngest members, there is nursery care available. Our nursery coordinator, Sarah Hamoud, would be happy to check you in. And we also have a intention table where the children can work on little projects during the service. Thank you.
Good morning. This morning's service is a little different. Those of you who have been around for a while will recognize that I do something like this about this time every year. This is what we call the question box sermon, where I'm going to answer your questions today, as many as I can in the time allotted. So you'll see there are index cards on the chairs and a few pencils in each row. Take some time right now to think about a question you want to ask. Take a little time as the service progresses. Right before we do the offering, which is going to come after Time for All Ages today, I'm going to come around with a basket and pick up all of those index cards, and then I will curate the collection and answer those questions as we get to sermon time. We do this because sometime in October I always end up traveling somewhere, and so this is also known as Let's Make This Sunday Up Together, why don't we? Now, please take a moment to ground yourself for this morning. Feel the weight of yourself in your seat. Feel your feet planted firmly, grounded to the earth that sustains us. Take a deep breath in and out, and let us begin. What is it that calls you here? that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together on this beautiful morning. Would you all please rise in body or spirit and join in our opening hymn, number 208. Please remain standing and join in our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. Please be seated. For all our joys and all our sorrows, whether we share them aloud with one another or we hold them close and quiet in our hearts, let us be together now in a moment of silence. Please join with me now in a spirit of prayer and reflection. Eternal and beloved, gracious source of all life and all love, we come together this morning grateful for this time out of time, which we have set apart so that we might become more fully present to our own selves, to each other, to our communities, to that which we call holy. May our joys be celebrated together, our wounds be healed together, our hearts be opened together. Beloved, let us know you as the spirit of becoming, at once enough and still unfinished. Open our minds, our hearts, our whole selves to the unfamiliar, to the surprising, to the new. Open us to the emotions we hold at bay, that crack our hearts where they need breaking, that bind our wounds and tie us together in a great heart. Open us to the new idea that pulls focus from our own narrow vision, that allows us to see the world with fresh eyes, through new lenses. Open us to the new person who adds to our understanding of what it means to say us, of what it means to say all. Open us to those who might lead us toward a clearer picture of a world where all are valued. Spirit of becoming, help us to draw this circle wider until we can embrace all without hesitation. Give us the courage to speak out for our needs. Give us the strength to reach out to those in need. Let us hold this community in our hearts this day and throughout the week to come, until we can be in one another's presence again. All this we pray in the names of those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. In the names of all the helpers of humankind. Amen. Now, I had a plan for this morning, but I think I'm going to switch up plans. I have no young bodies up front here. So let us take this moment to ponder questions we may want to ask for me this morning. I'm going to ring the gong. We'll take a little bit to write those down, and then I'm going to come around with a basket to pick those index cards up. we ready? Questions today? Okay. Okay. As we connect this morning, it is now time to give something of the gifts of this community back to the larger community we are part of. It is time for our offering. During the month of October, all cash and undesignated funds we collect on Sunday mornings will be given to our friends at Tewa Women United in support of their new building project and their fundraising. You may give through the basket this morning or through the GiveLify app if you have been using that. The offering will now be accepted. May what you give bring you joy and into deeper relationship with this community. We had a lot of excellent questions here this morning. I have trouble reading some of them, so if you don't mind outing yourself, I might ask you to speak them out loud for my benefit so I can answer them. We're going to take about 20 minutes and see how much of this I can get through. I always talk a little longer than I plan to in these. Question number 1, let's just dive right into it. 1, what changes do you see coming for the Unitarian Universalist movement? And 2, what changes do you see coming for Unitarian Universalist church structures and ministry? This is a timely question. And the answer in the short form is, I don't really know. I know what I hope, but church in general in America is going through a major shift in this country in how people relate to the institution. The pandemic forced some of that change in attitude because lockdowns and lack of one-on-one connection broke down some of our sense of connection to the institutions that we consider important to our lives. And the other major shift, and the one that is going to take a lot of brain power and a lot of creative thinking to actually deal with, is this. Church membership and attendance is in decline nationwide, and the rising generations who would be the ones to come in and step into the next phase of leadership and volunteering and support of an institution like this do not trust the institution of church. The generations we would expect to come fill in the gaps do not trust the institution of church anymore as a monolithic idea. You know, we all come in our various flavors, but for good reason in this country. I think younger generations do not trust the institution because it's either let them down or it shouts out a philosophy into the marketplace of ideas that is unattractive. The loudest churches are divisive. They talk a lot about who belongs in and who does not belong. And for the new generations, that message does not track. It is not something they want to be a part of. They want to be part of a world that is bound together. So the question that churches face now, and our church face, and Unitarian Universalism in general, is this: how do we connect with a generation that is inclined to not trust us? I have no answer to that question. That is the puzzle we are trying to solve right now. How do we connect with generations that don't see value in church, that want to connect in different ways, that don't want to give up a Sunday morning to do something they think might bore them? It's a big wave, and I don't know what the next answer is. I hope Unitarian Universalism is unique in that it finds a pathway to do this, because those connections, that boundless love, that sense of we all belong and we're always trying to widen the circle of who belongs, adjusting ourselves, I think that is something that we are uniquely situated to provide. The question is, how do we get that message out there in a clear way that breaks through all of the static of all of the reasons why people might not trust church as an idea anymore? a bleak start, I'm sorry. First time visiting any Unitarian church, hello, whoever you are, welcome. Hey! Does the Unitarian Church especially embrace any particular religious texts or recommend any? This is the beauty of a faith tradition that, as I just said, is ever trying to widen the circle of who belongs. Unitarian Universalism is a church that is much more concerned with how we live together across our differences and our diversity, instead of trying to figure out what the right thing is to believe for everybody, because we know there is no one answer, and anybody who is trying to give you one simple catch-all answer to life's biggest questions and problems is selling you something. We welcome that diversity in, and as such, the sacred text of Unitarian Universalism is the entire opus of human meaning-making throughout history. However human beings have tried to figure out what it's all about, what the answers to the big questions are, what it means to be alive and what it means that we die, all of that, all of those expressions are sacred text. Because when we engage with those questions in ourselves, when we try to put words to them, when we try to build art off of it as a way to express what words can't express, that is sacred work. Whoever among us is doing it. If you're sitting at home contemplating the meaning of life, you are doing sacred work. There is sacred text in there to parse. And like any sacred text, like the Bible, the Quran, any of the ones that are put out there as gospel, those texts need to be parsed and put into context and examined in relationship to all the other understandings of being human and being alive. Need to be understood in the context of the times that they were produced in. There's no text we will ever take literally. All of it is open for study, for appreciation, for interpretation, but none of it is taken as blind gospel here. But the sacred text I recommend is wherever you find something that sparks your own curiosity, your own exploration of meaning into what all this is about. People find comfort in groups that affirm their identity. How do we, as a church, find the right balance between affirming that identity and seeking out those things that bind us all together? Stay there. I want to go back to what I just said about our purpose being figuring out how to live together across our diversity. That's a very vague answer to this question as well. How do we find the right balance? Begins with, and this might trouble you for a second, begins with dismissing the popular notion that is out there that identity is divisive in the first place. Identity has become a partisan tool for driving wedges between us because I claim this identity, I am different from the group, and therefore I should be excluded, or I should be chastised for trying to be in the group, or what have you. But identity is what makes each of us unique. We all have our own interesting combinations of various identities. None of us has just one, and perhaps our identity, whichever of them we have, comes to the fore depending on what context we're standing in. But diversity is what makes life beautiful. Diversity is what really contributes to life meaning something, that makes life worth living on this planet, because we're all not just cookie cutters, and there's no expectation, or there should not be, that we're all going to be the same in some way. So how we find the balance is to lean into, in our faith tradition, what that call is to say, just acknowledge it's there. There's a saying in justice work that different isn't good and different isn't bad. Difference just is. And the more we sit with that, the more we're able to hear the stories of people who claim different identities from what we may have, and we can wrap that into the sacred text of all meaning making that we're talking about here, and figure out how to celebrate those differences, that diversity, those identities, and live with them in spite of where we might think divisions might be. But it begins, and I want to go back to this, with letting go of the notion that some would like us to have, that identity is divisive in and of itself. Tell us how many jobs are available in volunteering. Oh my God, I'm so glad you asked that question. So many jobs. We right now are looking for more members of our worship team, either to get up and help with leading parts of the service, or working a little more in the background to make sure everything's physically set up the way that it needs to be. We need that right now. We need people who are looking to help out with maintaining the physical structures of our building and work with our building chair, Jeff Franzak, to take care of those things and schedule those things. We are always looking for people to volunteer in religious education. The more volunteers we have, the more depth of programming we can offer to children and adults as well. We need goodness, people who are good at finance. We need people who like to play with technology and want to sit in the booth back there on a Sunday morning and run the live stream and the slides and the sound and all of that. We need, I can't even name it all right now, because this church runs on your time and your talent as much as money you may pledge to us from year to year. Primarily because I can't do it all. I'm only good at certain things, not all things. Don't put me on a finance committee. I can barely read a budget. Don't put me on a building committee, because I'll probably break things faster than I fix them. We need people with all sorts of talents, diverse talents, to keep this up and running and be part of. If there is something you're interested in doing that we haven't even thought of that might make a difference to the church community, come and tell me about it, and let's see if we can make something out of it to just enrich the life of the church and make it that much more deep and wide and accessible. So many opportunities. Holy cow, I have 5 minutes left. These two kind of go together. How does a Unitarian Universalist proselytize? What would that ever look like? And how can we, as Unitarian Universalist members, recruit new members? Is there a course by which we can follow? Being a good example is the most important, however. Yes, that is number one. How do we proselytize? We just live our lives by the values that we explore here and get deeper with from week to week. But number two, and I cannot stress this enough, I put this graphic a few months back in my newsletter column. The number one reason people come to church for the first time is because someone they know and trust invited them to come along with them. That's it. That's it right there. You don't have to make a case for a particular God or non-God. You don't have to be able to explain what Unitarian Universalist theology is, because it's really complicated and it changes from person to person. All you have to talk about is what you found of value, maybe a little bit of something about how your life has been changed or improved by being part of this community, and then hey, I think you'd really dig this. Do you want to come with me next Sunday? And that's it. There is more growth work to be done around that really bleak question, the answer that I gave at the top of the service about reaching out to people who just don't trust church, because that's going to become more and more of an issue. Living your values where they can be seen, asking people to join you. That's where it all begins. Two ministers were removed from the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. Is this a cancel? Let me start by saying, and this is just from me, I have a quibble with the notion of cancel culture being a thing in the first place. A lot of what gets referred to as cancellation in popular media, in the ether out there that we are paying attention to, is just consequences that probably should have happened in the first place for bad behavior. That's not canceling, that is accountability. In the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association, in the work of the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, we have a code of ethics and best practices that we follow. And we know what we're getting into when we come on the path to ordained ministry. We know what is expected of us, and we know what might happen if we violate that code. The code also contains ways in which we try to come back together when a violation happens, so that we don't go down a legalistic pathway. We try to come back into relationship with one another. Now, sometimes ministers are removed from fellowship for very good and obvious reasons that no one would argue with. Sexual misconduct, financial misconduct, kind of the big crimes that you don't want somebody who has been entrusted with the ministry of church to be in a church with anymore. Sometimes the ethical violations have to do with how we've agreed to be in relationship with one another as ministers, and sometimes that from the outside might look a little more vague. But the thing is, we know what's expected of us. And that's the thing I want to express. We know what is expected of us, and we know what the pathway is when we break trust with one another to try to come back into relationship. I think I know the particular ministers who are being asked about here, and I'm not going to go into that whole long story in the 20 seconds I have left on this timer. We know what's expected of us. We know what the pathway is when we bear trust with one another. And if we refuse to, after we've stepped into this role, fully cognizant of what we have promised to one another and to our congregations, if we break that trust and then refuse to even get on the path, there's no way to rebuild that together. And in this instance, this is what happened. Ethical codes were violated. Pathways were offered to restore things back. They were refused. And we all agreed as ministers that this is how we were going to be together. What choice do we have at that point? And then I'm going to end on this one, even though my buzzer just buzzed at me. What is the Christmas season like at this church? Excellent question. Christmas season here is similar to what you might find in any other Protestant church, but also somewhat different because it's not the only winter holiday religious tradition that we engage with here. So on Christmas Eve, we'll have a traditional Christmas Eve service with candlelight and reading of the story of the birth of Jesus from the Gospels. But a couple of nights before, we'll have a full-on pagan welcome solstice celebration out in the parking lot with a spiral maze and little fires lit everywhere. And we'll acknowledge Hanukkah sometimes if we can do it authentically. And even here, we'll do a pageant. Sometimes it's a Christmas pageant. Sometimes we've done a pageant for solstice. This year, I'm trying to write a script, and I make no promises that it will be finished in time. A pageant about all of the various variations of St. Nicholas throughout the world and throughout history. We'll see how that goes. I do some stuff around Advent leading into the Christmas season here. I will bring out the Advent wreath. We will light the candles from week to week. I'll do a little meditation around that. I don't know if everyone appreciates that. I do know for me it is very helpful because the run from Thanksgiving to Christmas is what I like to call the runaway toboggan of dynamite, and I hope I get through the end of the season without exploding. So that moment for me of being able to rest and contemplate and acknowledge the sacredness of the season that we're entering into helps me focus and make holidays more meaningful for all of you. And that's my answer to that. I want to thank you all for asking your questions this morning. I have like 7 more left up here. I'm very sorry I didn't get to them. They might be the seeds of sermons at some point in the future. I have all of the questions from every one of these that I've done for the last 17 years now in a box in my office, and they stay with me, and they're there for reference cards for me as well. So thank you for being curious, even if I didn't satisfy your curiosity today. Important announcements and upcoming events can be found at the back of your order service through our announcements email list. If you haven't signed up for that already, you can do that at the front table. Through our monthly newsletter, The Voice, which you can receive via email, and that announcements list on our Facebook page and elsewhere. Just a few to highlight this morning before we depart. First up, our monthly forum is taking place almost right after the service back in here in the sanctuary. Today, Jennifer Young and Steve Howard join us to talk about search and rescue work here in Los Alamos County. And then tomorrow night, for some more talking, Rabbi Jack Schlachter from the Jewish Center will be here to do a reprise presentation of his Science Fest lecture about Oppenheimer that was also part of the Oppenheimer Festival in July. A lot of people who wanted to see that couldn't get in, and so we're happy to offer another opportunity for people to come in and get a chance to hear that. That'll be tomorrow night at 7. And then Saturday evening, also at 7, Peter Mulvey returns to give a concert here. It's his first time back since about 2016 when we were still in the TRK building and trying to be a storefront church for that year we were building. He is a lovely singer-songwriter, and I don't say that just because we've been friends for 30 years. He is an immensely deep and profound songwriter and also incredibly funny and entertaining. His concerts have been very popular here, and I'm thrilled we can have him back. That'll be at 7 p.m. here. Doors open at 6:30, and admission is $20 at the door, so I hope you'll join us for that. And then finally, the following Saturday at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, we will be holding the ordination service for our own Tina DeYoe, our Director of Religious Education. She passed the Ministerial Fellowship Committee the other week, and we are happy to be able to welcome her into fellowship as a minister and to welcome her as a new minister in the context of our own congregation. So please come and make that a big celebration. I hear Crow may be flying back special for the event, so maybe you don't want to miss that. And now would you all please rise in body or spirit and join in our closing hymn, number 108. May life bless us and keep us. May the light of life shine upon us and out from within us and be gracious to us and bring us peace. For this is the day. This is the one wild and precious life we are given. So let us all find a way to rejoice and be glad in it. Go in peace.